I recorded most of the previous episodes with a cheap Aldi condenser mic. Not the best quality, but it was less sensitive to the sound of the fan on my Windows laptop. And I have to sit close enough to the laptop to read the script on screen. At best, the fan sounds like this. I coexisted with both Mac and Windows for a decade before going all Windows around the year 2000, largely due to reduce unnecessary costs. But I am now seriously considering going back to Apple purely due to the latest M4 Mac Mini released in November 2024 and which everyone has been raving about. I have been lent an M1 Mac Mini to check its functionality and performance before I buy anything, and I've used it to put this episode together in Pro Tools, the downloadable free intro version, which seems more than adequate for most singer-songwriter productions, let alone the low processing demands for podcasting. For the production of this episode, I am using just the available standard library of 36 plugins, and of those, just EQ and compression. Compared to my many years of recording on a Windows machine, imagine my surprise when, recording this narration, I switched off my laptop and this was all I could hear. Happy days, despite the silence being really quite unnerving after 10 years of home studio recording. Anyway, on with the show. It is titled Running from a World War, to reflect a convoluted background story. For the last episode, I explored my COVID-era project of reimagining and re-recording my first album from 20 years prior. Today's story has a similar theme, but focuses on reimagining just one track from my very first home studio album, Prescient, in 2015. That track was a remarkable song, Running from Red, written by Martin Hale, my album collaborator. Racking his own dimming memory, Martin says that the idea for his song had likely been inspired by a somewhat obscure 10cc track from 1978, Red's In My Bed, one of their signature jokey songs. By contrast, Running from Red was anything but jokey, but it shows how our brains can suddenly jump tracks and head off in quite unexpected directions. Running from Red, Martin's second go at songwriting, was amazing. It tells the powerful story of his mother as a young child, fleeing with her family from the Soviet advance across Eastern Europe towards the end of World War II. Now here's where things get interesting. In 2022, I found myself revisiting Jeff Wayne's 1978 masterpiece, War of the Worlds, that epic rock opera double album based on H.G. Wells's famous story. I mean, who doesn't love a good alien invasion story? Especially one where the Martians are finally defeated by the common cold. Talk about the most successful and cheapest planetary healthcare plan. This album had captivated me when it was first released. It was a fascinating blend of synthesizers, rock band, and full orchestra, all tied together by Richard Burton's iconic voice and dramatic narration.
No one would have believed, in the last years of the 19th century, that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space.
But now, revisiting it with 3 home studio albums under my belt, I was far more aware of its construction techniques. What really grabbed me was how the album used leitmotifs, short, recurring musical phrases that represented specific characters or ideas. They could be melodic, harmonic, rhythmic, or all 3. I was particularly struck by how well the synthesizers had been woven between the traditional instruments and how seamless it all sounded. In addition, I was intrigued by the inclusion of new bonus tracks. It turns out these were remixes from 2005 that added electronic dance rhythms to the drama. I'm not one to give details, as I wouldn't know dubstep from trance, but I do know that they make you tap your feet. This rediscovery of War of the Worlds couldn't have come at a better time for me because, in 2022, having recently released 2 albums, my creative reservoir for new music was bone dry, and, other than helping Martin record an occasional cover, I was feeling pretty uninspired too. But then something clicked. Russia had recently invaded Ukraine, dominating the news cycle and pushing the diminishing COVID tensions into the background. It brought to mind Russia's earlier annexation of Crimea in 2014, the very same year Martin had written Running from Red. It felt like the universe was drawing circles and I was standing right where they all intersected, with musical crosshairs on my forehead. But would it be wise to focus any light on Russia? The original song was based on World War II, but now Putin has no qualms about openly threatening World War III and the use of nuclear weapons. It is well known that any Russian who doesn't show 100% support for Putin ends up, by a remarkable coincidence, poisoned, in jail, in the gulags, in exploding aircraft, or having their towns and villages pummeled into rubble. Many of his top aides who have fallen from favour have soon afterwards also fallen from very high windows, and always under mysterious and unexplained circumstances. However, on the positive side, if Putin ever sends his goons after me, I at least live in a single-floor dwelling, and, being in Australia, the windows are open most of the time anyway. Plus, I figure any KGB agents sent to Australia would probably run screaming after soon encountering their first snake or huntsman spider. Anyway, back to the music. I approached Martin about possibly redoing his track with a War of the Worlds flavour, particularly incorporating those modern dance beats. He told me to knock myself out, which I assumed was his blessing, rather than to go and punch myself in the head. To make it a bit easier than starting from absolute scratch was that I still had all the original stems from our 2014 recording sessions in Pro Tools on my Windows laptop. Unlike professionals who are at it 24/7, my own DAW use is sporadic, so I often forget how to do stuff by the time I start my next project. However, I did remember from past experience that I've had major issues when trying to stretch or shrink existing waveforms to new speeds or durations. So I completely sidestepped those potential problems by keeping the original session tempo. In fact, I resurrected and reused the actual Running from Red DAW session file from 2015 and, before adding the new elements, simply deleted everything I was not going to reuse. From that original session, I only wanted to keep 3 essential elements: Martin's acoustic guitar, Martin's lead guitar, and Martin's vocal.
When you're running from red. When you're running from red.
With Martin's vocal, in line with the dance aesthetic, I used a vocoder to harmonise his voice in a call and response phrase. For those unfamiliar with vocoders, imagine what would happen if a robot and auto-tune had a baby. The plugin takes a single vocal phrase and pitches it according to whatever MIDI notes I input. I also added a separate synth that used those same MIDI notes, hopefully making the effect more musical and masking some of the harsher vocoder pitching artifacts.
When you're running from red. When you're running from red. When you're running from red. When you're running from red.
I had contributed the original bass and string parts. I would redo these from scratch and use different instrument plugins. For example, the original fretless bass would be replaced by a more menacing synthesizer. The original drum track was a free loop that Martin had found online. Not overly inspiring, but we thought it was great at the time. All loops had very poor or inaccurate descriptions, and all loops needed to be auditioned before deciding whether it would be of use. But by 2022, I'd invested in and already used the Easy Drummer plugin on approximately 50 tracks. The EZ part of Easy Drummer is a bit misleading, kind of like how instant noodles still take 3 minutes to cook. But it's infinitely variable and much easier than learning to play real drums, which my wife has definitely appreciated. Anyway, I was already comfortable generating and editing suitable rhythms and fills with natural sounding percussion, at least for my singer-songwriter productions. However, dance beats were going to be a completely different animal altogether, so I purchased a new Easy Drum pack for €29, which provided basic electronic dance sounds and rhythms. I hoped this would provide enough variation for the project. Although keep in mind Mick Jagger's words, you don't always get what you want, but you get what you need. Here's just a few of the drum sequences I created, helping to drive the building of tension and the release. They also helped to link the many different musical sections. For synthesizers, I took a practical approach. Professional software emulations of the classic synths like Moogs, Prophets, Jupiters and Korgs each cost more than my car. So I delved into some free resources like the OB-XD28 emulator and Pro Tools' own Expand instrument library. I auditioned 100 or so preset sounds and settled on a handful that worked well with the arrangement and mix without any need to dive into complex programming or knob twirling. I love the sound of synths, but my eyes glaze over if trying to recreate them from scratch or modify them. It's a whole world of useless pain, especially for just occasional use. Either a preset is good enough or it's not. War of the Worlds' complex system of leitmotifs worked well for its multi-character and long-duration double album format. For my much shorter project, I created a small handful of instrumental riffs using my selected synthesizer sounds. The DAW proved invaluable here. I could loop sections endlessly while experimenting with different ideas on the keyboard. These riffs are pretty much front and center in the track, so I'll not extract them here. And I'm not going to do any further forensic breakdowns as I can't actually remember most of the steps and decisions. Although here's one special mention. Considering the Russian connection, I couldn't resist sneaking in a little Bond movie classic musical phrase. It made me smile then and still makes me smile now. So let me conclude by playing you the final mixed track. It's roughly twice the length of the original song. While not the shining exemplar of production and audio ecstasy I would have liked, I still think it was worth doing, and I'm happy that it captures the feel I was aiming for.
Running from red, when you're running from red, when you're running from red, when you're running from red.
maintain the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup.
Silhouettes in the trees, stealing food from the fields, lashes in the sky, running from red. Can you tell me why? Family is torn apart. There's terror in the air, running from red. We'll meet at Waterloo 20 years from now, when we laugh and cry together, we'll remember how. We'll meet at Waterloo 20 years from now, when we laugh and cry together, we'll remember how. We lost all that we had, but brother, you and I know, gotta keep your head when you're running from red. Running from red. Running from red.
That's all for now, and episode 10 will be released in due course. I already have an audio project in mind for dissection and discussion, and it will contain a major announcement. Don't forget, you or anyone you know who has been involved in the production side of an audio project is warmly invited to provide a guest episode. There's an invitation in the show notes. Until next time, bye.